Well, here we are, just checking in here. Uh, we're just gonna wait for a few more people to get online. So not to worry. Uh,
Oh, how do I do a mute?
oh yeah. That's a good question.
Just in case I start making noise on my end here. I haven't done this version before. So that's messages. Tools. What's that one?
It might be on the side, the right side, maybe. That might be where it is.
Yep, I found it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool beans. Cool beans. Well, I'm just gonna get the link and all that sorts going here and all that sorts and do the usual posting and all that stuff. The but anyways, but anywho, just waiting for a few more people to join and stuff. Hopefully this phone will stay up as it's needed. Okay, good. Anyways, we have periodically available. But anywho, uh just gonna post it a few more places and wait for a few more people to join in and come on and join us, uh, as they say. Okay. But bear with us as we're getting more and more people hopefully to come on and join at any time now. But today we're pretty much planning on covering the topic of some uh, involving Florida to explore different parts of the Florida history, what history sites exist, and then of course what Florida history sites or in general history or general history remain somewhat unknown with Florida and all that sorts. Because as we all know, sometimes stuff tends to kind of slip through the cracks and all that sorts, as some of you all may be able to imagine. Unfortunately, um, and then of course, some of the future sites that we're thinking about exploring and all that sorts. Um, but anywho, um, okay, well, I guess it's we got a few people here, so that's pretty good. Um, so with that being said, so we have Jeff here. He is another history aficionado here, as well as myself. Um, so he's been in the hobby for quite some time, as you all may or may not know. For those that don't know Jeff, um, he has a pretty vast experience with history. He does do some history involving, some, in Puerto Rico, as well as some other places as well. And it's actually quite exciting. And I've kind of been paying attention to his, uh, you know, some of his outings and stuff, and I find it to be quite fascinating, to be honest with you. Um, and at some point, I do plan on hoping to get involved in it as well. As great as that, as for me, that's pretty great because there's so much that you can get involved in. Um,
I'll talk to you. I'll talk you into it at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely though. I know it's kind of one of those things for me where it's like it's I'm definitely pretty motivated to do it. And for those that know me, um it's it's there's no limit as to what I'd be willing to get into and stuff, which has been really nice for me. And I've kind of used it as an outlet to kind of get involved and find some good things to do, and
Yep.
especially with volunteering and keeping busy, and just going to a lot of great places and great events and great sites, especially here in the Carolinas and in some cases Georgia. But I know that in Florida, there's a vast amount of history. Um, um, Uh, there was a vast amount of history in Florida. Um, yes, Kings Road Historic District. Um, there should have been a link. I'm not. I know that I just posted it with a minute or two. It might still be loading on your end, maybe. I'm not sure, but glad you're able to join us one way or another. Um, but anyways, I know that with Florida history being so vast, a lot of people don't that's what I find pretty fascinating. Um, uh, uh, Especially with St. Augustine and I mean, of course, everyone has uh, some of the big ports there, but not many people also the I mean, not know a lot of other things that uh, St. Augustine, what I find pretty fascinating. But as far as our first topic, we are going to definitely explore some of the the different parts of Florida history. The different parts of Florida history and stuff. And we're going to kind of somewhat combine that with the second one as well, like what history sites exist as well. So we're going to kind of combine those. I know that I've kind of itemized those in the description and stuff, but I think that those kind of go hand in hand in a sense. And I know that Jeff will chip in, as he can and stuff, um, and all that sorts, which will be great. But anywho, so I guess that we can probably start off with some of the great things that are in St. Augustine and all that sorts. Um, Among, of course, there's going to be other places as well. Of course, don't be afraid to chime in the comments as well for those that might be interested in stuff. Um, you know, we're more than willing to answer questions as we can. And all that sorts. So if you have any questions that you want to have answered about Florida history, we would love to be able to answer them. Um, and all that stuff. So by all means, so I'm gonna type in some of the sites, kind of pull up some links here on my computer to as far as the um, great stuff in St. Augustine that I've been to. Um, I know that that I've kind of been through in passing, but also some places that are really really big in St. Augustine as well. because I know there's some pretty cool stuff there. Um, to have in my plans to go to. Um, for those that may or may not know, um, um, I do plan on going to the Fort Castillo de San Marcos um, at some point this November over the weekend or over like the week of or like the weekend before Thanksgiving, and that's gonna be one of my really big visits. Uh, and I know that um, that's it's one of the few great forts there that I'm aware of. I think there's like several forts in the general vicinity of St. Augustine though, but I think that um, the Castillo or like the Marcos is probably one of the bigger ones or the
It's
biggest one there.
Castillo. Yells aren't pronounced. It's Castillo.
Oh, my bad. So it's pronounced Castillo.
Yeah, it's Spanish for castle.
Oh, okay, okay. My bad. I apologize for that, though. My bad. So the Castillo Marcos, de San Marcos. I know that's um, one of the pretty big, exciting forts in St. Augustine. For those that are not aware, um, it was built. I think now. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that to my understanding was that before the current structure that we see now, there was um, a wooden structure that was there that they had used temporarily, and then I think,
There were several of them there over 150 years or so. Some of them decayed and rotted away, and others burned down when the British attacked and stuff. I believe the Dutch also, if I
oh,
recall correctly. I could be wrong on that one.
oh yeah, and then of course, then of course see the big, the fort that we currently see today. Um, it's one of the bigger ones that are there that are in the general state of Florida. There are a few forts in Florida that are quite size and stuff like this one. And there's also one in that's like west of the Keys, Key West.
That
Um,
is that is Dry Tortugas.
yeah, the Dry Tortuga.
That was a Civil War era brick fortification. That is where Mudd was interned. He was the surgeon that operated on Booth after he assassinated Lincoln.
Oh yeah,
Uh, that's a much bigger fort. San Marcos is my by my interpretation is a tiny fortification from what I'm used to.
yeah.
It's a small place.
Oh yeah. So I guess it's Fort Jefferson. I'm pretty sure from what the Kings Road Historic District. Let me look this up though, because this actually is pretty cool. Um, Fort Jefferson. This is pretty cool.
It's on an island or an atoll out there in the ocean. Um, it's a national park, and you can camp there for up to 3 days at a time on site.
Yeah,
You have to
and
make reservations ahead of time.
I think that it's like a 2.5 hour boat ride from what I've heard, or it's not too bad of a boat ride, but I know that there is a boat ride like a
3 miles.
yeah, it's
There's
like yeah, it's like 50 or 60 or maybe 70 miles or something. I think that it's 70 miles approximately. Um,
I was booked to go there one time and then had to back out last minute. But it looks like an incredible place to visit.
yeah, that's going to be one of my bucket list forts that I'm going to have to stop by as well, probably within the
You
next
can,
couple of years.
there, there's two ways to do it. One, you can camp. You can camp. There's a ferry that goes back and forth, and the tickets you usually got to book out months in advance, or you can do a day trip. They also have an airplane ride that
Yeah,
costs you.
yeah, I heard about that though, and I was like, well, I don't know. That's interesting though. I mean, I'm not. I
You
mean,
you get a different perspective from the air than you will from the boat.
yeah, I'd be curious to, to know which one would be the. I mean, I would assume the plane would be more popular. I would assume, but I would also imagine, with that being said, the weather would probably have a huge effect as far as the weather, like the ocean waves and stuff, would probably have a big effect on that. I would imagine. Um, but nonetheless, I would certainly be willing to try that one as well. Um, but so I guess as far as the Fort Jefferson, I just pulled it up right here, was built to protect one of the most strategic deep water anchorages in North America. Um, by fortifying the spacious harbor, the United States maintained an important advanced post for ships patrolling the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, I don't know, straight to Florida, nestled within the islands and shoals that make up the dry tortugas. The harbor offered ships the chance to resupply, refit, or seek refuge from storms. I guess it was along one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Uh, or Hands would have threatened the heavy ship traffic that passed between the Gulf Coast, including New Orleans, Mobile, and Pensacola. Um, but this is actually pretty interesting, though. So, nearly 30 years in the making, Fort Jefferson was never finished nor fully armed. Huh.
No, and tortuga is turtle and also in Spanish.
Yeah.
It's dry tortuga because there's no natural fresh water on the island.
Well, I guess that makes for quite the resupply. Um, huh. That's pretty interesting. Huh. I mean, one would imagine. I guess that's not something that I really thought about. That actually is pretty interesting, though. Huh. Well, and I would imagine, obviously, with it being such a small location in the middle of where it is, it would be pretty hard to kind of have a well. Uh,
No, and if you look at it, the entire island is only a couple of acres that encompasses the fortress, and it's surrounded by the ocean. So there
yeah,
is no,
it'd
and
be
they're only meter 2 meters above sea level.
yeah, it'd be pretty hard to really dig a well there that would be able to be producing
No,
good
that's
water. But this is pretty interesting, though. This definitely looks like a pretty good topic that would be pretty great to check out and stuff. Um, well, I guess that what we can do is at some point, within the next couple of years, I'll have to get some more information on that and study up on this because this does look like some pretty cool stuff here. Um, Moat wall is closed. I guess there's some alerts here. Okay.
yeah, they're constructing it or something. That receives damage to 1 year from one of the hurricanes.
Yeah. And then the moat wall will be closed for repair. Um, huh. Well, that's pretty interesting, though. I mean, obviously, I know that with some of those, older structures, especially with the moats. By no means am I an expert on it, though, but I would assume that there's probably been some erosion with that, with rain and stuff, and they're probably, really, really, really sensitive, and they're probably one of those things as far as like erosion and stuff and eroding away. Um, Probably a lot going on with that. Um, so this looks like it'd be a pretty cool topic to check out and cover and stuff. Um, that jazz. Um, Then um, so some other parts of Florida history that I've actually found. I know that last November, um, there was a pretty interesting site I had gone to. Um, it's not widely known, but it is relatively known. It's actually kind of right near Brevard County area. Call it for the Windover people, or otherwise known as the Bog people. That was something that was a pretty cool topic. Um, somewhat pretty, or somewhat known. That I found interesting. Um, uh, this will be one of those other ones that we'll probably visit later in the video as well. Um, as you know, while it is known, but there is still some aspects of it that are unknown. Um, but what's so cool about it, though, is that I had been in contact with the um, Brevard Museum of History or History and Natural Science on this topic that I found pretty cool. And they had gotten me a lot of information, and the guy that I had contacted though was Ben Rader. He's based out of that particular museum, and he was able to give me a lot of information in regards to that as well. Um, which has been great, and that's how I was able to, between him, and going online and reading some of the newspaper articles that had come out about the particular topic. During that time, it was like like the 80s and stuff, that this had kind of gone down. It started off as when they initially started breaking down, or like breaking ground in this particular area to start building houses for like a development. This I forgot the gentleman's name. It's been a few months that I that I had mentioned the guy's name, but he was the operator of the one of the heavy machinery, the excavator there, and he started kind of pulling up stuff and what appeared to be rocks, and like these little pebbles and like rocks and stuff, and one looked like a skull. So he got out and looked at it, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. So of course, like any reasonable person, he called the police, and the authorities, and who in turn, after looking at it, realized this isn't a recent murder. This is something that had occurred, hundreds of years ago. Considering there were, so long story short, it turned into an excavation, to where they called in some people from different colleges to kind of check out this whole site, and then it turned into a whole big ordeal, and then of course, some excavation happened and stuff, and they started digging it out and did that, but in trying to not turn into this particular part into a whole 4-hour discussion on that. It was pretty interesting though, and I did actually go by where the community was. Um, they actually ended up finishing it, of course, which was great. But at the same time, it's kind of like sad to see such a place like this kind of be developed. Unfortunately, it's me being the person that I am. I love being able to preserve all the history that we can, and all the archaeological sites that we can as well. So it was kind of sad to see the surrounding area of the lake, and the swamp and stuff, the lake and all that sorts being developed. So when I drove up there with my sister's husband and stuff, as interesting as it sounds, we ended up kind of driving into the community. I kind of had to do a tiny bit of research as to figuring out where the exact location of it was. Wasn't very hard, but it's not a private community or a gated community. but there is neighborhood watch, and I would highly suggest, if you do go there, I probably, it's on it's technically on private property, but between the road that you would pull off onto and go down, and then between there and the lake itself, there is an open lot or two, but I would highly suggest not going by there as it is still technically private property. And there were people looking at us as we were sitting in our car, so we kind of just drove off. After pulling in, we kind of looked at it. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we better get out of here, and all that stuff. So it was kind of one of those sites where it was kind of like, yeah, we better be careful, um, and all that stuff. So, um, definitely, if you do decide to venture there, do at your own risk. I personally would not suggest it, but that's just my opinion. Um, but anywho, now kind of go back to St. Augustine. I know that I do want to give St. Augustine a shout out as well, with some of the really big historic sites that are there. Um, Give me a second. I'm still pulling up some of the links for some of the great places there. Um, like the Castillo de San Marcos. That fort there, by the way, is pretty cool. I was able to do a get talk to one of my friends, and he showed me a whole bunch of photos of it. Um, because he was able to go. My friend Alex. Um, so he was able to show me some great stuff. I think they sent me some stuff. I know that um had looked at it and stuff, but it was really fascinating. Um, but anywho, um, as far as the other cool things in St. Augustine is that now I forgot the name of the school. There was a school with a basement, um, that he had gone to, um, and it was really interesting. And I can't for the life of me remember what the name of the school was, but it was a pretty darn cool place. Anywho, um, but I know there was like a basement and then like a what appeared to be a dungeon of sorts as well. As interesting as it sounds. And but I guess I'm gonna have to probably get in touch with him again and probably leave it in the comments. Um, at some point at a later time. Um, because I know that would be a really cool thing to kind of post here as well. Um, but see if he's on. Yes, Christine, you went to. Um, but anywho, so that's one of the cool things there is that, and then but other than that, though, is the Castillo. That one is another great place to go to, as I mentioned there. So if you were able to go there, definitely do so. Um, Now, on another note, some of the other cool places that I've gone to that are pretty popular for those that have been to Florida, you've heard of the Treasure Coast. Now, for those that have heard the Treasure Coast, you may or may not be familiar with the um, the how it got its name, the Treasure Coast. So, for those that don't know, it was simply because of um, the 1715 Spanish galleon or the Spanish fleet that had gone through there in 1715. and unfortunately, there was a huge storm or hurricane that had unfortunately or like came through the area, and of course, unfortunately, caused some of these ships to, like, a total of about 11 ships, about 11 of them had crashed. Well, there was a total of 12, but 11 of them crashed approximately. Throughout the general area, from Fort Pierce up to Melbourne, Sebastian, Grant area and stuff. And I know that one of the uh, uh, cool museums that I was able to go to, that I've gone to multiple times, like two, three times. Um, um, oh, yep. So Kings Road Historic District has been a wealth of information as well to us today. A couple of sites to check out is Avil Street. It's the oldest road in America. Many of the buildings on St. George Street are original or rebuilt buildings dating back to the first Spanish period. Okay, well that's pretty interesting though. Um, eh, that that would be that does sound pretty cool. Fascio Spanish Military Hospital on the south side. Um, okay, so those do look like some pretty great places. Let me put that in my notes actually. While I'm at it, bear with me. You know what? I should start compiling. I'm gonna start adding that to my list of other places as well to go to in Florida. Um, if you don't mind, because that does sound pretty cool. Um, Theo, and then Spanish, because I think that I have heard of the Spanish Military Hospital. Um, I think I have. I don't know much about it, but I did hear something about it. Um, Military Hospital. Um, then of course I know that you mentioned um uh Ville Les Street. Okay. Well, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna make note of these places as I'm going. As I'm kind of doing some research and checking out more. As I'm doing some. I'm still working on my script for the fort, the Castillo. Um, for that, and I think it's going to be kind of a work in progress, as there's just so much information about the actual fort, and I want to be able to do it justice. So I don't, it's like generally for projects, it generally takes me about 2, 3, 4 days to kind of gather information, and then and then about the same time to kind of write the script and stuff, and that sorts. It takes me a little, not too long to really make a general script for stuff. But with the Castillo, I want to make sure that I do it justice because it's such a huge part of Florida history, or just American history in general. With it being what it is, especially with it being the first quote city, the oldest city, St. Augustine, being the oldest city and stuff. With it being what it is, I want to make sure that I do it justice. Um, but the barracks are now National Guard station. Goes back to the first uh, Spanish. Okay, well that's pretty fascinating. As I said, there is so much history, even just in St. Augustine, that's even relatively unknown or not known to the large majority of people. And it's um was renamed was renamed Fort Marion after the Francis Marion from the Revolution. Okay, yeah, yep, that's one of the things that I did read a little bit about, but I didn't get too much into that aspect. But that is something that I do plan on getting more into and stuff. Thankfully, uh, thankfully I've been able to talk with some of the I forgot the wonderful lady's name, but she's the one of the head rangers there though that I was able to get in touch with a number of months ago. I think it was in January that I talked to her for a for a little bit in regards to the fort and stuff, and kind of got some information from her. And she did mention some of that great information over the phone as well. um, so if it kind of makes it known, I have been doing a little bit of research, but there is just so much about it. It's crazy. But yes, that is true. Fort Marion, technically kind of goes in hand with Castillo. That is something that I do plan on mentioning in the video when we do get when I do get to it in November. Um, So I'm still kind of in the research stage and kind of, piecing together how I want to do it. Um, for the script itself, I know it's that part's only going to take me about, 2 days to really do. But for me, it's more so the research aspect of it now that I really want to get right, and just kind of, combing through it, because I just want to get it right. Um, so thank you for reminding me of that. That is really cool to know, and make known as well. So that's been great. Um, but now what else? Um, so something else that I found pretty interesting was and of course it's okay if we jump back and forth around with everything. That's perfectly fine. We can definitely do that as far as like the different places like St. Augustine, back to the Keys, to Tallahassee and stuff. Now another cool thing that not a lot of people know as well, or well actually a lot of people do kind of know about it, especially the people in the general area. um, there was a site that I did go to um, in Florida that isn't as well known, but it's still pretty well known in the general vicinity of where it was the Kissimmee Island Cattle Company, um, which is something that um, I found very interesting, and it's actually kind of right in the River Ranch area. So for those that are familiar with River Ranch, um, it's that particular part of the area is a kind of somewhat of a touristy trap, but not so much at the same time either. But it is pretty cool nonetheless to really check out, for those that might enjoy camping, because there is a campground there. But to be able to get to this particular site, the Kissimmee Island Cattle Company, you kind of have to go like 10 to 12 miles out into the woods, um, which is like who who would go that far out into the woods, like go through like a gate and all that stuff. So you do need to do a little bit of groundwork to be able to get that access to that gate. Um, but it is one of the places that is pretty well known in the general area that I found pretty cool. It's kind of not necessarily where the term cowboy came from, but because of Florida's really old history, and when the Spanish had first like initially came to Florida, in the 1560s or 1565. They had, of course, there was cattle involved, and they came over with cattle and all that stuff though over the years, from that point on. And so of course, with that being said, with there being with Florida being the first initial point of the cattle industry, the first like real initial. Of course, this was before the other 13 colonies and stuff like in like Roanoke. This is before that. This is like the first contact with that. So they brought cattle over to Florida, which is the first point of contact with that, and then of course going from there, cattle went west, and so that's kind of how the term cowboy kind of, or the idea of it kind of came about was from Florida. Um, so for those that may be into cowboy history, definitely have to kind of give that a shout out as well. Um, that's always um, that's always a pretty big point of contact with that. Um, but anywho, so before I get too far along, Jeff, if you have anything, just let me know. I know that Jeff here is a great resource as far as information goes. He's always a wealth of knowledge, in my opinion. He does make canteens as well. Historically made canteens as well. Um, so that's been a great process to learn about as well through him. So as I mentioned, he does a lot of reenacting as well. So I know that I've kind of come to him about a question or two, throughout the time that I've known him and all that sorts, and it's been great. Um, uh, what food do I eat? I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, but uh, I guess well, I'll just kind of leave that question alone. Well, I wish I had a good answer for you. That's a long story of its own. But anywho, as far as the um, gosh, I lost my train of thought. um, anywho, someone remind me where I was at. Oh gosh, but anywho, I know that Jeff here is a great resource of information. I know that he does a lot of stuff in that regard. So
No,
don't be
thanks.
afraid to kind
I
of chip
haven't, I haven't figured out. I haven't figured out how I can type a reply in here yet.
in.
It won't let me
Yeah.
type replies on live video.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer this guy, to be honest. That just made my day. But I know that the best thing I can tell you if you really, really, really want to get strong, uh, eat your beans and all that
Get
stuff.
Popeye spinach.
Yep, spinach and stuff. That's the best advice I can tell you. Um, other than that, I mean, it's kind of a luck of the draw. I just got lucky. Um, but anywho, um, that's the story with that though. But I know that Jeff's full of great information. So definitely don't be afraid to check in with some of that. But kind of back to this whole Kiko site. It's spelled Kicco, but it's pronounced Kisso, which I found really interesting. And it actually served as a company town from like 1915 until like the late 1920s. Um, so that was pretty much the deal with that. Um, they had a saloon or like a saloon or two there, and then of course they had some other things like some bunk houses and sorts as well. Um, oh gosh. Anywho, so that was pretty much the gist of it. Now, for those that really want to go to that place, you're gonna have to contact like I'd like to say like the water district, which is what I, which is pretty much who I contacted as well to get a day pass. Now the pass to get in there is free. Everything about it is absolutely free, which is great. So that's That would not be a problem. But for those that want to actually go, definitely be really careful. As far as like driving down the road itself. Um, Now, I guess you could very well drive whatever car you choose, but just know that the road itself is sand and mud and dirt. So you might want to be careful as to what you use to drive down there. I know that that was kind of one of those um, since I'm not going to mention names, but someone mentioned about bringing a Prius, which I guess you could probably drive down there. It would be perfectly fine, I guess, but as long as you're conscious of the rain and stuff and the and all that sorts. Although um, if you have a better vehicle to drive, I personally went down that road with a truck, and it was perfectly fine. It did seem relatively pretty, relatively packed down, but it's still something that I wouldn't necessarily take a risk with. Um, I probably wouldn't drive down there with a Model T. Let me just put it that way. Um, but anywho, with that being said, I know that the next site that I found really, something that's really, really big and great there um, is the Navy SEAL Museum. Now, the National Navy SEAL Museum, that's actually located in Fort Pierce area. So for those that are familiar with that, I know that that place gets a lot of raving reviews. And when I went there, of course, I wasn't sure what to expect, to be honest with you. Um, it's a great museum. It goes over the history of the Navy SEALs and to some extent the other special forces and stuff. But it's more Navy SEAL based. And I found the whole thing really fascinating, in my opinion. So, for those that are in Fort Pierce, please go by there. We were able to see some of the off-road vehicles that they had, whether they would use some of uh, the the helicopters and some of the boats and stuff. There's like several sections within the museum itself, um, and it's kind of in sections. So um, like one part they did all the weapons and stuff, and then the next there was another part where they even had like some of the vehicles and stuff that they used and drove with and all that sorts. And then of course the clothing and stuff. So it was kind of like a whole variety of things that they had. So that was like a lot of the indoor stuff was that. And then of course, it was we were probably there for about a total of 2.5, 3 hours, maybe closer to three. Um, maybe about 2 hours and 45, 3 hours maybe. But we were kind of going at a somewhat moderate pace. Um, but you could definitely very well spend at least 3.5, 4 hours there if you really, really chose and were pretty diligent about reading every single piece of signage that was in there. That was going over the each particular aspect of the museum. Um, so that's another museum that I found that was pretty fascinating. That's pretty well known actually. Um, Now, then of course the outdoor section of the museum is where they had all the boats, and then of course an obstacle course as well. Um, so that was pretty nice to be able to see some of the boats and some of the underwater apparatuses that they had. Um, now, um, it's well worth the trip. I think it was I'd like to say maybe like 15, $20, I think, give or take, but it was definitely worth the price. nonetheless. So check that place out. It's in Fort Pierce area on the East Coast. Now, I really now this next topic. Gosh, I mean, it just seems like it's just like a big touristy trap, but it would be a lot of fun to go to. But the the gosh, it's the um NASA. Um, the whole thing with that. Um, gosh darn it, I'm having a block. The Kennedy Space Center. Um, um, but NASA or the Kennedy Space Center. Um, Now I've never been there though, but I've heard a lot of great things about there. And actually, interestingly enough, I had talked with this gentleman who actually used to work there back in the 70s. He was not an engineer, but he did play a part in the landings of all the space shuttles and stuff. I found that pretty interesting. And how he suggested doing it is if you really wanted to get into the whole, the whole Kennedy Space Center, he would suggest doing it in 3 days instead of just going one day. Um, but I know that a lot of people know about the Kennedy Space Center, so I'm not gonna go too much into it. Um, and trying to avoid, um, I guess, really um, going over stuff, a topic that a lot of people know about. Um, it's kind of somewhat self-explanatory, but by all means, check it out if you so choose. Um, but in other news, on to the next site. Um, um, so, I guess this kind of leads me on to the part three or the question three. What Florida historic sites in general, um, or general history of Florida, remain either unknown or relatively unknown. Now, this is one of the extremely bigger topics involving this because there are so many sites and so much history that's not necessarily unknown, but it's not necessarily publicized. And I know that with with Florida being how it is, it's kind of one of those places to where you know people, when people think of Florida, they think of the nice big sunny beaches and or they think of Fort Lauderdale or they think of Miami or the Florida Keys and stuff like that. Um, but they don't really think of the small places. And I know that I did bring up one or two places though that are relatively unknown, but they're still known, but they're also not widely advertised at the same time. Um, One of those places being the Kissimmee Island Cattle Company, like I had mentioned earlier. It's not a site that's necessarily advertised on a large scale, um, because I think that it kind of gets overshadowed by the River Ranch area and stuff, with it being kind of like a campground or kind of like a big thing like that. Um, People don't really go past the combination lock as far as like reaching out to the water, to water district or the water division for there, um, which I wish people did do is look into it and visiting places like that because it's those places, and also some of the smaller places in St. Augustine, kind of like what the Kings Road historic district had mentioned before. Some of the barracks and also um, you know um, the schoolhouses and stuff, and also the Spanish military hospitals, and that were the general area there. There's just so much that's not advertised, and that being one of the places as well. And then of course, a lot of people hear about the Spanish the Treasure Coast, but they also don't necessarily think about how it. I mean, not on a. I mean, not a lot of people understand how it got its name though, which is kind of what I find a little not necessarily sad or upsetting, but it's like it would be great if people looked into the how it got its name and stuff. And it was because of the 1715 fleet that had unfortunately crashed off the coast there that it got its name. So that's kind of how that happened and stuff. So I wish that more people would, look into that. Um, but it's but the whole Spanish fleet is really big, and I'll even give you the museum name, the McLarty Museum, and that's in Sebastian Grant, Melbourne area, right on the east coast. Um, so it's north of Vero, but you kind of have to go on the ocean side of the intercoastal to be able to get there. I think they charge like $2 to get into the museum, but it's well worth it. Because they have some videos going. They're always doing little events like that, and they have some great exhibits there. So it's definitely worth checking out if you have the opportunity to do so. Um, but also, um, another great little site that I've gone to that isn't widely known. Yes, it is known, but it's not widely known on the scale that some people would think, is Fort Christmas. Uh, that fort was in existence during the Second Seminole War. So, for those that are familiar with the Seminole Wars, I think there was like three of them total. I think, yes, about a total of three, if I'm not wrong. I'm waiting for someone to correct me, um, so don't hold your breath too long. Um, yes, yes, okay, great. Yep. So there was three then. Thank you, Kings Road Historic District, on that. Um, but Fort Christmas, I found was really fascinating, and unfortunately, it's not as well. At least from my perspective, it's 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 very underrated. I think that it has a high. I think that's a very high value site that not enough people know about. And I actually did a video on it, as crazy as it sounds. And I'm so glad that I was able to go there and have the opportunity of going. Um, so I did a whole like informative video on the outside of the fort. And then of course I went inside the fort itself. Now granted the fort is reconstructed, but it does give a pretty good idea of what it was like, um in sorts, which is great. So I go inside and I took a video of the blocks and stuff. And they had some exhibits within the fort itself that were really enjoyable and informative. Um, and the site is free. Last I checked, it was free, or at least I got in for free. So it's definitely worth your time. It's in Christmas, Florida. Um, And yes, Fort King is another great site. It is another great fort. I personally have not. Um, well, um, I'm wanting to do some more events there and stuff, and do more there. I would like to kind of do some, do some stuff there. I'm hoping to kind of get in. I know that I was in contact with some people there. Um, and I would kind of like to get in contact with them again at some point. I know that we kind of, ended up falling out of contact just because I was just so busy at the time. I was just so busy and ended up falling out of contact with them. But I would love to be able to talk more with them at some point. Um, and maybe we can arrange something for when my schedule kind of opens up a little bit. Because that is another great site that does some really great interpretations and stuff. Um, so if you have the chance to go by Fort King, it's definitely worth it. They have some great, passionate employees there and stuff. People who, who are associated with the site. They're really passionate about what they do. So definitely have the. So if you have the chance, definitely stop by Fort King. Um, so when you go to St. Augustine, also check out Fort Mose. It was one of the first black settlements that was just rebuilt. Okay, I'm gonna make note of that. I'm gonna put that in my um, folder of places to check out and um, do some research on because these places are great. And thank you very much, Kings Road Historic District, for that idea. I'm gonna make note of that right now. Um, and with the hopes of revisiting that within the next couple years. Um, so that's the plan. So bear with me as we do this, um, or as we kind of go over, over like the next couple years. Bear with me. These are topics that I'm wanting to do. Um, so let's keep an eye out within the next year, a couple years, and we'll cover topics like that as well. Because that is pretty cool. Um, Also, um, the the next site that I find now here's another one. Now this one, um, oh no, you're all good. Fort King Historic District. No, I really like your ideas. I really definitely and enjoy your input. Please continue to give me input as well. Um, I definitely enjoy your input, so please keep at it. Um, those are definitely some great ideas. Um, Now, something that um, I'm not sure if where is this? I know that I'd made note of this before, um, but so here's another thing that's uh, relatively underrated or under or not well known is the Florida Trail. So for those that have heard of the Appalachian Trail, it's the the Florida Trail is Florida's version of the Appalachian Trail. If you want to make such a comparison, if you would like to venture that direction, as far as making that comparison, um, but in essence, that's what it is. Um, and that's actually kind of how I found out about the Kissimmee Island Cattle Company near River Ranch. Um, but so it's kind of like a hiking trail, but there's also some really great places to stop by, um, and check out. So it's kind of like the Florida Trail is kind of like, as I said, kind of like the Appalachian Trail is kind of like a big trail that kind of goes through Florida. Um, So if you're into that kind of thing, great. Definitely check it out. Um, Now, the next topic, something that I find very interesting, is now for those that may or may not be familiar with the Benson House. Now, this is kind of a micro site. It's literally a historic home. And again, it's called the Benson House, otherwise known as um, the Grant House. It's actually in Grant, Florida, Grant Sebastian area, but it is in Grant. That's another great house to stop by. Um, Make sure that you give them a call beforehand to see if they're open. They may or may not be willing. Well, I'm sure they would be willing to schedule a tour with you, but I was able to get one about a year or two ago, and while it is a small house, it was well worth the tour. Um, now the Grant Historical Society does do, which is the one that manages the house, the Benson House. The Grant Historical Society will do events, and they will offer tours of the house. So you'll have to go on Facebook and check out the Grant Historical Society, in which they'll notify everyone of the events and stuff. They're generally pretty good about it, but definitely shoot them a message. Um, the Benson House, again, it's in Grant, Florida, and it's actually right on the Indian River, which is the Indian River, the Intercoastal Waterway. It's pretty much the same thing, just different, just different names of calling it. Um, I always grew up calling it the Intercoastal Waterway, but I've also occasionally called it the Indian River. Um, I know that it all depends on the person and stuff. Everyone calls it different, but it's one of those things. But I find that to be a really small, underrated site. So I definitely suggest if you have the chance to go by there. Um, Now, another great site that I think is underrated, a fantastic site if you ever have the chance to go by there, um, is Gilbert's Bar House of Refuge. Gilbert's now again, it's Gilbert's Bar House of Refuge, and that's actually in Stuart, Florida. Now, with this particular um, site, it's it's not a particular well, it's not a building, but it is a site, and there is some buildings that are on that particular property. Um, so initially, when it was founded, it was it was created with the understanding that, um, like in conjunction with like 10 other buildings along the coast. But the reason why it was created was because of the fact that there were so many accidents um, along or like boating, kind of like well, it was kind of created in the late 1800s, um, kind of like 1874, 1875. The late 1870s was when it was kind of initialized and stuff. Um, but Gilbert's Bar House, I actually went there and I also made a video on this particular site as well. But this is another underrated, but well worth the visit site. And again, it was created because of the simple fact there were so many shipwrecks on the coast of Florida that that they that Congress decided to create these houses of refuge. Um, to They created these quote houses of refuge to, they obviously knew that they could never ever prevent shipwrecks, but they could always handle the aftermath of a shipwreck. So they had these houses of refuge to where um, the shipwreckers, the people who were the victims of shipwrecks and or boating accidents or whatever, these places were created to house these people, get them back up to speed and rested up, and then they could ultimately be sent on their way. Usually these places were manned by like one or two people, or just like a couple people, each individual house of refuge, quote unquote. But um, I think that ultimately, I think that there were a total of maybe 10, maybe five to 10 of these houses, if I remember correctly. It's been such a long time that I made this video, like in 2020. Actually, yeah, it was actually the spring, um, the early spring of 2024. So don't hold me to the exact number of people. I think it was like one or two people that usually manned each of these houses. But Gilbert's Bar House is in Stewart, and I think that the admission ticket is like $10, but it's well worth it in my opinion because there's like videos that they'll show you, and they'll even give you like little tours and stuff of the place, and they're more than accommodating as far as like answering your questions and stuff. And you can have weddings there. Uh, so by all means, if you're looking for something interesting, by all means have a wedding there. Um, Now, a surprise fact about the particular site is that Gilbert's Bar House, there is actually a shipwreck, maybe about 100 feet off the off the actual. Now, now again, this is actually on. Um, oh, hello, Ryan. Um, uh, yeah. Okay, great to know. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello to you too, sir. Um, anyways, but there's actually a shipwreck just off the coast there that's like 100 feet off the coast there, and you could actually see it during very, very, very low tide. Um, so found that pretty fascinating when I went there. So definitely check it out if you can. Um, a great, worthwhile site to go to. Um, so another cool site. I know that I have a bunch of them written down here. Um, now, now to kind of circle back to to the topic of the 1715 Spanish fleet. Now I know that I mentioned that the McLarty Museum does a fantastic job um, of covering the topic of the 1715 Spanish fleet. They do a fantastic job covering the topic. And I personally, that's my favorite museum that's related to that particular topic. Now, there is the Mel Fisher Treasure Museum that is a museum that covers the same topic. Um, Now, that one, um, that's a decent museum, but I prefer the McLarty Museum. But the Mel Fisher Treasure Museum is pretty good too. If you have the opportunity to go by that one, check it out. Um, Sorry, I skipped that earlier. Um, Now, here's another thing. Now, here's one topic that a lot of people know about, but it kind of falls under the topic of it being not known about. Well, yes, it's a very well known, um, like the Intercoastal Waterway, or otherwise known as the Indian River. A lot of people know about it, but it's a topic that not a lot of people put some consideration into. Um, that sorts. As far as its creation, so technically, it actually does go from the intercoastal waterway does go from Florida all the way up to Maine. Of course, it is broken up a little bit, but over the years, they've actually kind of connected the dots per se, if that makes sense. Which has been kind of fascinating. Um, so they dredged out some areas and all that sorts, which has been really great. So it was also used during World War II. For those that don't know, the intercoastal waterway was used by the military to kind of for to be able to evade or to be able to prevent themselves from being exposed to German submarines. So, for those that don't know that, that's another part of Florida history that's relatively unknown involving the intercoastal waterway. Um, Now, as far as that goes, there's not too much to it. I mean, there's a lot of history with it, though. I mean, of course, there's like transportation, like transporting goods north and south on the intercoastal. So there's a lot of history with that. But again, that's pretty, plain and simple. Um, but in any case, definitely, if you all ever have any input, definitely like questions or anything, definitely put them in the comments and stuff. And Jeff and I will do what we can to answer your questions and stuff. Um, we're definitely pretty big fans of doing what we can to answer them and stuff. He's a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge, um, and all that sorts. Um, but so if Jeff has something cool to contribute, he'll let us know whenever he has a chance. He's definitely great to talk to, fascinating. Um, but anywho, as far as the next thing that I find pretty cool, I know that I'm trying to kind of give these places a nice shout out with giving a little bit of information as well. While still kind of moving to the next topic as when I can, is the um I already mentioned that, but the I've also something else that's pretty cool is the um where is it on here? Trying to find it on here. On my big list of things is the where is it? Um oh yes. So the okay, let me pull this up online for you so I can give you some cool little bullet points on it. Um the Dade Historical Battlefield State Park. Um, so the Dade Historical uh, or the historic battlefield. This is another. This is something that is pretty well known, but again, it kind of falls under one of those topics in which I feel needs more attention. Um, because of the simple fact that just because you know it's it's not talked about by a lot of people. um so that's kind of why I kind of hold this particular one as well. Trying to pull up the link here and stuff, um but anyways, the the Americans were defeated here. I think that there was a battle there that occurred. um Commemorate the site of Dade's battlefield of 1835. This particular one I'm not too versed on, but I know there was This is one of those topics that I'm hoping to cover within the next couple of years when I get a chance to kind of do more with it. I do have I do intend to go to, you know, the Dade battlefield here and stuff, um, and doing a video on it, as I feel that it's a really, really valuable lesson. So if you ever have the chance to go here, please do. Um, it's definitely well worth it because there's also a lot of chances to. Oh yeah, and they do hold a yearly um, reenactment there. I think it's in January, if I'm not wrong, for this particular fort, at the Dade's Battlefield Historic Site and all that stuff. Um, for the battlefield and all that stuff. I do intend to stop by here at some point. Um, Now, I know that Fort King was also mentioned by the Kings Road Historic District earlier. Um, and that just so happens to also be on my list. Um, so if you all have the chance to go by there, it's actually in the Ocala area, if I remember correctly. Um, so they are open from 10 to 5, I think, um, on Fridays and Saturdays. Um, so with this particular site, I find it to be pretty nice. Um, it's from the Seminole Wars and stuff. I forgot which one. As I mentioned, there were three Seminole Wars: the first, second, and third. Um, but Civil War battle occurred there. Yep, the Olustee is another great site. Yep, a major Civil War battle occurred there. Yes. Um, so that is another great site to go by. Let me go to my list right now and add that. Um, to my places to kind of look at and check out and get around to doing a video on at some point in the next couple years. Um, but yes, um, but Fort King, I find to be a really great site. It's another great opportunity to learn more about the Seminole Wars and stuff. So definitely, if you have a chance to do so, please stop by. Um, Now, as far as some of the Spanish history, I know that um, Jeff is an expert on, or more, well, more, well, he's a bigger expert than I am in that regard. I know that he may know a little bit, quite a bit more about that than I do. But there is as mentioned, there is, in Florida, there's definitely a lot of Spanish influence, as you all know, um, involving, because of course, Spanish, were in Florida for years and years and years, um, from like 1565 to, and on, and then of course, to the Revolutionary War time, when it was ultimately taken over or like taken or ultimately, um, you know, brought into the Patriot hands, to the Americans' hands and stuff. It was kind of, given to them and stuff, to the Patriots, to the Americans, right after, at the end of the, uh, you know, the American Revolution. But nonetheless, there's still a lot of Spanish influence there. Just even from after that, as you all can imagine. And I know that Jeff has a lot of information on that. Hoping that we can get him to tell us a little bit about that when he's available. But as he can. Um, Now let me see. I know there was a pretty cool. What was it? There was actually a site that I was actually going to ask Jeff about. Um, in that regard, actually. Um, um, because I know that Jeff would have a little bit, better idea, like a grasp of it. Um, Yep. Well, yep. Yep. Okay. Yep. Sorry about that misinformation there. My bad. Yep. So the Spanish did get Florida back after the Revolution. It was turned over to the United States in 1821 as a territory. Yes. My bad. I apologize for that. You would be absolutely correct. Sorry about that. Sorry for that misinformation there. My bad. Um, thank you for correcting me on that. Thank you very much. So yes, that is true. Um, the Spanish did get Florida back after the Revolution, and it was turned over to the United States. In 1821. So that is true. Um, now, now there is some. Uh, Now there, I don't know if um, Jeff would be familiar with this, but there's a Mission San Luis, in Tallahassee, the western capital of Spanish Florida, from 1656 to 1704. Um, I guess today the mission brings the 17th century to life, guides and period dress, reconstructed buildings and exhibits and archaeological demonstrations. The site is a National Historic Landmark and recipient of a preserve and all that sorts. Um, so that is something that I did make note of as well. Um, Found that pretty interesting. Then, of course, um, what else? San Pedro. Um, Now, another cool Spanish influence, uh, as the Kings Road Historic District had mentioned earlier, was Fort Mose Historic State Park. That's another place that with some Spanish influence. And as a matter of fact, um, I think that maybe if Kings Road Historic District has a say, I don't know if they would agree on this, but I think that Fort Mose, if I'm pronouncing it right, I apologize if I'm not. Um, Sorry, my voice is going out. But Fort Mose Historic State Park, Fort Mose and stuff. I guess in my opinion, it's one of those sites that's also um, it's not that it's unknown, but I think that it would be great if a lot more people knew about it. um, so one can only hope. Um, so it sounds like Mose. Okay, okay, okay. That's a great point there. My apologies. So Mose. Okay. Um, Mose. So I'll make note of that. Um, I do have that on my list. I know that I copied that down earlier as far as places to check out. So as well as do a video on. So that is my intent to do so. So thank you very much on that. Um, but I do think that it is one of those sites that's relatively unknown. Uh, and Kings Road Historic District, if there are some sites on here that you would like to, now I'm going to kind of give this as an open offer to you. Um, if there are any sites that are, that you would like to do a video on, like a joint video on with me, um, I would be more than interested and more than happy to do so with you. I would love to do some videos with you. Um, you know, uh, I would definitely be interested in doing some with you as well. Um, but before but before we do so, definitely check out some of my videos, um, and all that sorts, and see if it's something of interest to you. So definitely check out my videos, and kind of go over some of like the site tours that I've done and all that sorts, and let's get in contact. Um, I think that I have you on my Facebook, the Facebook group and stuff. I'm pretty sure that I have you on my history group, the Our Living History one on Facebook, that private group. Um, yes. So Flagler County, yes. But do cover a lot of early Florida history. Yes. Um, so by all means, reach out to me on the on the live feed link on the group page and stuff, and I'm gonna get in contact with you. Like we're gonna find a way to get in contact, and I would love to definitely do some videos while in Florida, or as I visit Florida and stuff, because that would be really cool to do. Because I know that you all, as well as Jeff, are very knowledgeable on the topics and stuff involving Florida history. So I know that you all do a great job and stuff, and are you very, very knowledgeable. So let's get in contact after the video and stuff, and we'll or at some point within the next day or two, and we'll definitely talk more, because as I said, I'm very, very interested in being able to spread the word of history and bring a lot of these sites to life. Um, because that's one thing that I think that especially with some of these smaller sites, I think that by not bringing these smaller sites to life does a disservice, in my opinion, and making them more known is something that I try to do. So let's definitely work on something with that. Um, but anywho, I think that I see Jeff there, as well as for the Kings Road Historic District. Um, we would definitely like to. What is it? What was I going to ask him about? Um, uh, hey Jeff, got a quick question for you. Are you familiar with the Mission San Luis in Tallahassee? Is that something that's
No, not that one.
no, not that one though, because I know there was a few little sites here that I know that have some Spanish influence of sorts, that I was kind of going through the other day when I was trying to compile a list of some unknown sites and stuff. Um, but I know that. But anyway, well, while you're here, so some of your, I know that some of your knowledge, of course, of Spanish history does kind of branch out into Florida and stuff. What are some sites or little ins and outs of some history in Florida with Florida interest, or kind of like no matter how much or how little you want to share, totally up to you, as far as like some like little bits and pieces here and there that you want to share that you find are really, really important, that you find are not as known or underrated, that you think, that you more know.
Florida, you got me on. I don't know quite as much as on Florida. A little bit here and there, but you've covered most of it already.
Oh yeah, because I know
And,
that there's definitely a lot there. As interesting as it sounds, it's like
yeah,
crazy.
no, I don't go to Florida that much. I'm more of your Puerto Rican guy to go to for Puerto Rico and history.
Well, I know nonetheless though, Puerto Rico does have some quite a bit of or does have quite a bit of stuff there.
Five
Um,
hundred years.
500 years of great stuff going on there. Because what stuff do you have to share about Puerto Rico as far as your trips and your you know I guess your trips and stuff, and like events and stuff that have kind of branched over. Like, what are some great stuff that you've done there while in Puerto Rico?
No, they hold Puerto Rico. They've got several reenactments a year. Uh, the British tried invading in 1797. General Abercrombie and Nelson failed there. They had 6,800 troops or so on the island and almost 70 ships out in the harbor and couldn't take the island. 1625 was a Dutch attack. They actually captured the island and burnt down the city of San Juan, and that's what kicked off their major building spree on the island there, where they built their fortresses to what they are today that you see now. Um, Fast forward, 1898, the sinking of the Maine, where the U.S. invaded Puerto Rico and they became one of our territories. Then for the next 50 years or so, the forts there were military bases. From there, but I don't want to hijack your Florida post here too much. Puerto Rico's got its own hours long discussion on.
Oh yeah, because I know there there is a lot with Puerto Rico and stuff. I know that have I told you much about the McLarty Museum and stuff though when I was there, and the 1715 Spanish fleet and stuff? Have I have I told you about when I was over there though and stuff, doing that stuff on the east coast of Florida? Or
Yeah, I think a little bit, as I recall.
I know I'll have to talk to you about that at some point though, because I know that's definitely a topic that you'd probably definitely enjoy at least hearing about at some point, because I know that that's kind of where, especially with it being Spanish influence, and something that kind of branches over, and connects the two in a sense, between Spanish, history, and with Puerto, especially with Cuba, Puerto Rico, and some of the islands and stuff, and kind of branches over a little bit with that, with in some cases with Florida, um, and especially with Florida being such, having such great and rich Spanish history, it's all intertwined in its own way, which is kind of what I find to be really fascinating and stuff. I'm sure you could probably agree in a sense as well. As vast it is, as vast as it is, that's what I find so great about it. Um, that sorts. Um, but you know, what's 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 something that you have kind of grasped as far as the Spanish influence, on some of the islands like Puerto Rico and all that sorts, as well as from what you can grasp from to that extent, you know, Florida as well as Puerto Rico. Like, what are some of the things that you can kind of, grab from as far as the Spanish influence?
Oh, the Spanish influence in Puerto Rico is still very strong there. A lot of them lean more towards the Spanish influence than they do American influence. They've been American since for 125 years now or so, but you talk to a lot of them, and they view more Spain as their ancestral lineage than they do American, just because they've been Spanish more than they have been American. Um, and then there's a lot of political modern stuff going on and everything else too with them. But
Well, that's pretty cool. It's one of those things. I know that with some of my growing up, I actually kind of grew up just north of Fort Lauderdale, and which is in a sense kind of, somewhat near Miami, about an hour, maybe hour and 20-minute drive, depending on where you're at and how fast you drive. Me being the somewhat stereotypical, well, I don't know about stereotypical though, but I was always a slow driver. Uh, so me being the typical one that I am, it's just drive down the road and but having always, come in contact with growing up and with my high school and middle school with having some of that Spanish influence, and I always found it fascinating to learn people's stories and stuff, to that extent, and I think that's kind of why you and I connect in a sense too, because I always love the wealth of information that you have as far as going to your, events in Puerto Rico and among other places as well, which is kind of what I find really fascinating as well, in my opinion, and just the wealth of information you have in that regard, and all that sort. So it's definitely one of those things to where it's appreciated, to be able to have access to your knowledge and information that you have. So definitely, definitely keep that in mind, and I'm definitely gonna have to go on one of those trips with you to, it's definitely in my, it's definitely in my plans to go to Puerto Rico with you, at some point, because I know that you mentioned, I think you mentioned December, if I'm not wrong, right? December's like the,
Maybe I'm not sure. It's up in the air at the moment. I got a grandkid on the way here real shortly.
yeah. Well, the next couple of years, I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to be today, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but for the next couple of years, if it's still in the list of things to do, we'll definitely figure something out with that.
Yeah,
Um,
sooner than later. I just got to make a couple of phone calls to other guys I know down there to put a couple tours together.
oh yeah, because I know that would be really fascinating. So we'll definitely have to work that out, and all that sorts. But anywho, well, that's great. So one more question for you. As far as I know that I think you have multiple kits, but I know that one of the kits that I've seen you wear, that one of the kits though, I think that you've worn to, um, I think the most of it is like blue and white, or white and blue and stuff. I think though, is that one of the kits that I?
Oh, that's my Spanish kit. It's a that one is Regimiento Fijo de Puerto Rico
Yeah.
uniform. That was their uniform that they wore in 1797 for the British invasion.
Yeah, I always enjoy looking at, enjoy seeing that one though, because it's like, wow, that's so cool, because I know doing research on that, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get it just right, and
Well, a lot of the issue with Puerto Rico and their reenacting and historical accuracy is lack of information. There is no extant examples of any uniforms left other than a couple of paintings. Um, even the one of the questions that a lot of us have are the buttons on our uniform. If you look at my pictures and stuff, they have a really large button. It's inch and 3/8. Uh, it's seen in several images as being a very large button, but there is no ever recorded or found button. They've done excavations at El Moro and Cristobal, and they've never found a button. There's no there's no museums in Puerto Rico or back in Spain that has an original surviving uniform of that time that has those buttons on it. So materially wise, they are very low on original surviving examples of stuff.
oh yeah, absolutely, it's
And then even in some of the other materials, you think, oh, they have a really large fortress there. You think you'd see cannons or this or that. They have no surviving examples really there. Either they have a couple rotten cannons and stuff in some of the areas, but there is no real surviving examples. Um, just because when the U.S. took them over in 1898, it was when they surrendered, they were allowed to take their equipment with them. So anything that was worth a darn that the Spanish had there at the time went back to Spain. Um, and some of the old relic hands that were left behind, bronze and this or that, were shipped to the U.S. and melted down for various statues at that time.
oh, interesting. Okay. That's pretty interesting. Well, I guess the Kings Road, I know it's modern, but how is the weather with Hurricane Aaron, about 170 miles east of San Juan? Good question. I'm not sure. Do you happen to know offhand?
I'm not there right now. From what I've seen from some of the other posts, it's sunny. They got some high tide warnings and this or that, but it's traveling. It's supposed to be far enough north away from them that they're only going to have some high tides and maybe an occasional shower out of it, but that's typical for them this time of year.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I know I'll admit I have not kept an eye on Hurricane Aaron. I feel
No, it's not supposed to make contact with mainland U.S. whatsoever. It's supposed to head north and be out of here.
yeah, that's kind of what I heard earlier today, but it's one of the few storms that I really haven't had much attention paid towards. Um, that's a good question. Um, Mentioned the Bolo Plantation. Yes, I have Kings Road Historic District. Yes, I have brought up the Bolo Plantation. Um, I do plan on actually going by there. Um, uh, Actually, this coming year, over Thanksgiving. Um, and I'm hoping to go by there. I think they have like a really weird, like really interesting schedule as far as when they're open or not. Um, I think it's like they're open Monday and Tuesday, and then it like switches or something interesting. It switches to Saturday. Uh, Bilo, yes, Bilo. Um, but then it like switches to like a weird schedule to like open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So at some point, I'm gonna have to. I'm hoping to go by there on Friday, um, the Friday before Thanksgiving. That is my plan as of now. Um, and that's another project that I'm almost done with as far as the research. As far as some of the little things and odds and ends with that particular site. So that is on my list of videos to do. So if you would like to get involved in that one, Kings Road Historic District, I would love to very much do a joint effort on that if that's of interest to you. Um, definitely we'll definitely get contact at the end of the video later about that after we're done, and we can definitely figure something out if that is of interest to you all. Um, and all that sorts. We can kind of figure out a way to do this because I know that you all are a wealth of information as well. And I always try to surround myself by people who are more knowledgeable than I am, and I know that you all are definitely fitting that ticket. So you and Jeff definitely fit that that definitely or that department. So I would love to be able to do that with you two as well. So definitely, if that's something that you'd like to do, just let me know and we'll go from there. Because what I find interesting about the the Bilo plantation is one thing that I find fascinating about them is that they sugarcane and stuff, among other things, and one thing that I actually find kind of a personal, not necessarily a personal connection, but something that I find interesting is as far as the processing of sugarcane. Because when I was growing up, I was like a little kid. Well, not a little kid though, but I was pretty young. I must have been like 14 or whatever at the time. Um, so crazy me at the time had found some sugarcane and and some farmer gave me a few stalks that I could take home and said, "Oh yeah, well here's a stalk or two of sugarcane, have at it." And so me being me, I went home with it and while getting weird glances from my sister and the usual grumbles from my dad and stuff and my mom and she, oh, what's William up to now? He has two stalks of sugarcane in the back of the truck. What's he doing now? what is he getting involved in? So basically, ended up taking the sugarcane home. And for those that have a little bit of knowledge on growing sugarcane, it grows like weeds in a sense, kind of somewhat, or at least kind of from the experience that I had, considering the little area that we had, that I had planted it in, on our side yard. So if you look at the actual stalk of sugarcane, you'll see the some knuckles kind of sticking up from the side of the sugarcane, and you're supposed to plant those upwards and plant it maybe about, um, yeah. So it's kind of like bamboo. So you have to have the knuckles facing upwards. Um, and you're gonna laugh at this. So I dug about 6, 7 inches underground, planted the whole stalk of sugarcane. Um, so I know that you'll probably be fascinated to hear this. Kings Road is, so the first month is like, where is it? Why isn't it growing? Second month comes by, and about like halfway through the second month, is when I started to kind of see, some sort of like growing, see something growing from it, which is what I found pretty cool. Then from there it was kind of like, the end of the world at that point. The whole side yard was covered in these, the leaves of it and stuff, or the offshoots of it and stuff, and ended up having to just take it all out and throw it away, unfortunately, though. But I remember growing up and cutting down a stalk of sugar cane, and of course, like giving like I would take one of the stalks down, give some to my friends, and get a little hatchet and stuff, and kind of cut the bark off, and then of course like use chew on the sugar cane itself. That's kind of what I used to do and stuff, or kind of use it as kind of as a natural sweetener for some stuff. Um, but I personally never processed it, but I always just used to just chew on the sugar cane when I was a little kid, and all that sorts. So it was always kind of a funny thing, you know. It's especially with me having a sweet tooth and stuff, having to, eat the sugar cane and stuff. So I think that's what I'm kind of looking forward to with the Bilo plantation, and Flagler and stuff. So we can definitely work something out with that, because that definitely is going to be a pretty fun, a very fun project that I would like to get involved in and check out and stuff, um, and go from there. So again, just let's get in contact at some point, after the video, and we'll sit down and or talk within the next week or whatever, or whatever's convenient for you all. And we'll kind of go over some information and talk about some ideas and all that sorts. um, but anywho, um, as far as another great um, place that I've found really interesting, and maybe you have heard of this, is um, the Sebastian Inlet. Um, and that's another underrated spot. Um, the area itself is very, very historic, because they had to continuously dig it out multiple times because they kept filling in over the years, especially when they first established it, the Sebastian Inlet. I forgot when they, I'll have to look up the exact date, but I know that um, for the Sebastian Inlet, um, yep, Mechanipe and Barberville. Yep. So I'm going to add those two places to my list as well. Um, so I'm loving these ideas. Um, P, then Barberville, and go from there. So I'm going to take down those two ideas. But as far as um, Sebastian Inlet. Not many people know that it's actually that it actually has um, some historical significance. Um, but which is kind of what I find very, very interesting. Um, there's a let me see. Um, but gosh darn, I know that it was. I kind of feel a little weird about it though, because like I know there's information on it. Um, but I know the Sebastian Inlet has been around for quite a few years. Um, I'd like to I'd like to say it's been around for for different parts of the um, 19th century. I'd like to say the later part of the 19th century, or like the middle part. Um, okay, yep. So here it is. So history of the Sebastian Inlet. The first settlers began to arrive in the Sebastian River area in the mid 1800s, and by all accounts, there were numerous attempts to open a quote cut or an inlet on the barrier island from the Indian River to the Atlantic Ocean near what is present day Sebastian Inlet. Among other settlers were two men, Reverend Thomas New and D.P. Gibson. For many years, it was believed that Reverend Thomas New was the first to attempt a cut, quote unquote, in 1881 after founding the town that would become Sebastian. A U.S. Uh, survey map in the district's historical collection that was drawn in the winter of 1880 to 81 shows Gibson's cut as a feature. Combined with other material evidence, we know that D.P. Gibson attempted the Gibson's attempt predated news, and historians believe that that first known attempt took place in 72. So, in 1905, at least six substantiated attempts to open a cut were made by 1905, and all were closed by sand, storms, and other natural causes almost as soon as they were opened. Coinciding with the sixth recording an attempt in 1905, Roy O. Couch, a figure whose name is synonymous with the Sebastian Inlet, arrived in Brevard County, and other or no other man would preserve the way Couch did to get a permanent inlet open. And then that sixth attempt was successful, as reported in the Fort Pierce Tribune. And it wasn't long before the inlet again filled with sand. Um, so in 1909 to 14, the Indian River Lagoon's water quality steadily declined. In 1914, a petition was circulated asking for a appropriation of $1,200 to open an inlet. 100 signatures were gathered, and a delegation of 40 individuals from southern Brevard County presented it to the Brevard County Commission at the April 14th or the April 1914 meeting. Roy Couch was among those who spoke in favor and was likely instrumental in putting the petition together or a petition drive together. The effort didn't lead anywhere. Um, so it kind of seems like a somewhat slight trend here. We're obligated to maintain the East Coastal Canal, do not want to incur added expense of dredging sand shoals that would form. The Corps insisted that for approval, a local tax district would have to be created to raise funds for the inlet's maintenance. Um, So it doesn't seem like um, board members were threatened with arrest. I've worked in cease. Um, Today, so 1920 to 1923, on August 31st of 1920, the district was granted a permit to dig, which would remain valid until um, December 31st of 1923. The inlet would once again open in June of 1923, at its current location, and small jetties were completed using rock carried on barges and transported by Model T Ford converted by Roy O. Couch. So as the so that seems to be kind of when it kind of opened up to what its current state is now. Um, so as a country was gripped by the Great Depression in 29 to 39, the inlet became even more vital to the area's survival. Substance fishing put food on the table. Um, so it kind of seemed like that in 1923 was when it finally opened up. So there's a lot of, so this is one of those unknown topics and stuff in history as far as the Sebastian Inlet. Um, so there is some pretty cool stuff there to check out. Um, so if you all can, definitely stop by there and check that out. Um, but anywho, um, so as far as another cool little place, um, now I know that you mentioned Flagler, um, Flagler County and stuff. Um, Kind of offhand, Kings Road Historic District. Kind of offhand. Do you happen to be familiar with Sam's house at Pine Island? Um, I'm kind of looking for some information because I was going to do a video on that particular topic a number of years ago. Um, I wasn't able to find too much online in regards to it, but the museum or the Sam's House at Pine Island is a historic site. Um, I know this might not necessarily be within your wheelhouse, but I was trying to find some information on it at one time online, but was not able to find much about it. And I know that it's a private site, as far as I know. Last I checked though, yes, that is Lee County. Um, okay. Yep. I just wasn't sure if you knew of anything offhand about it, because I know that's another site that's not only is that particular site small and unknown, but I've heard a lot of great things about it. Um, it is a site that I do plan on going by at some point. Considering its location, it would be very easy to get to. Um, so at some point, I do plan on going by there, one way or another. Um, I think that Jeff may have. Think the reception over there might not be too good where Jeff is though. But anywho, but yes, I do plan on going by there at some point. But wasn't sure if you happen to know offhand. Um, oh yeah, there's all kinds of small sites around Florida that are just so unknown, and but they're great sites. It's kind of like the Benson House, which is in Brevard County. Um, I just love going by there though, just because it's just such a small site. It's quaint, but I just wish that more people knew about it though. It's for me. I mean, yes, I mean I love going to big sites and stuff and all that sorts. Like for example, like I would love to go to Gettysburg, and all that stuff. I mean, but everyone knows about that though. and doing a video on that would be fantastic. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those things to where, um, you know, to where, you know, I just love bringing attention to places that are, not as well known as as well. So I kind of like doing like a mix of both. Um, for whenever I have the chance to do so. Um, just because. Um, you know. Um, but anywho, so if you have any, um, you'll have to send me a list of other places that you think that would be pretty cool to check out in Flagler County, that you are familiar with, or the sites in general that you're familiar with, just in general, that you think that would, other than in addition to the ones that you sent me earlier. Uh, so kind of in addition to what you sent me earlier, you have to send me those as well. Uh, have time at some point. I know that there's definitely a lot of great places to check out. Um, Now, what is it? Far south. Um, um, Bear with me. Um, uh, Flagler County. So there is the Flagler County Historical Society. Um, I know there's so the Holden House Museum. Are you so how familiar with the Holden House are you, Kings Road? Are you pretty familiar with that particular building or that particular house? Uh, I'm looking it up right now. Um, it's located on the north side of SR 100. Um, oh, okay, okay. So Flagler County Historical Society. Yep. So you're the preservationists for the Flagler County Historical Society. That's so cool. So you're very familiar with the Holden House. Uh, um, no, that's involved in the preservation and stuff. So I know that you know the struggle of being able to preserve some of these great sites, especially with a limited fund and all that stuff. Uh, I know that's like the biggest struggle these days with being able to maintain these resources and stuff, or these great places and all, especially with it being especially with some of these sites being really small, being the size that they are. Um, so I know that you understand the struggle of being able to do that, maintain them and stuff. Um, so at some point, again, we're definitely going to have to talk at some point. This is pretty exciting. We're gonna have to talk at some point about some of these cool places, especially the Holden House. The Holden House would be pretty cool. Um, and you'll have to inform me of some of these other places and stuff, that you are familiar with and all, and go from there. Um, 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 oh, yep, yep, yep. So we are pretty much self-funded. Um, the KRHD is much of a sub project of uh, the Flagler County Historical Society. That's so cool. And yes, Yeah. So what kind of stuff are in the collection that you all like, as far as like the artifacts that are in the collection that you all have for the Holden House, or just in general? Do you happen to know offhand, I presume, or um, if you're able to indulge in that, because I know that some cases it's kind of hard. Um, yep. So I just did work on two mid 1800s spinning wheels and a yarn winder. Well, that's so cool. Um, Oh, yep, no worries. Whatever you're able to do, Jeff, is perfectly fine. I know that your battery's dying. Um, I actually have a one of those little wireless chargers for my phone. So it's kind of like a magnet, and that was the only way that I was able to kind of keep my battery level at what it is now, while still kind of having some sort of battery charge to it. Um, but whatever you're able to do, all good. No worries, all good, Jeff. No worries. But yeah, so the spinning wheels and stuff and the yarn winder. Um, those are always interesting to see people use and stuff. I know that you'll laugh at this one. I was able to get a hold of a few like 10 pounds of unprocessed cotton. Don't ask me why. One of my coworkers, or one of my friends and coworkers, gave me a whole bunch of unprocessed cotton and stuff, and um, it's quite the process. Um, it's not an easy task. It's time consuming and stuff, but you have some history pieces dating back 4,000 years. Lots of Native American pieces. There's a ton of stuff in there. Well, that's so cool. It's. I mean, I can only scratch the surface as far as. Um, uh, yep. Jeff here has a question. They are referred to as weasel, correct? Like the nursery rhyme, "Pop goes the weasel." Um, that I'm not 100% sure. Sealing cotton was a big cotton here in Florida, but let me look up the that question for you, Jeff, because I'm not 100% sure either. That would be an interesting question to find out about. Um, they're referred to as weasel. Weas. Um, then it's the um, what is it for the yes. When it gets to a certain length, it has a cracker inside that makes a noise. So I guess that's where that reference comes from then. Okay, well, that's great to know. Um, spinning wheel. Yes. So when they spin, they automatically a count, and the mechanism inside snaps and makes a loud pop. Okay. Um, spinner's weasel. Spinner's whistle, or a clock reel, is a mechanical yarn measuring device, um, consisting of a spoked wheel with gears attached to a pointer on a marked face. Okay. And an internal mechanism that makes a pop sound after the desired length of yarn is measured. Um, Yeah, I would imagine, dealing with such things, you definitely tend to learn more and more about things. I know that, especially with, for me, just with some of the whole, clothing thing as well. There is just so much about it. With like historic clothing, it's like you wouldn't think that there would be a lot to it, but there is, it's like the details and stuff behind it are just it's so vast. It's like, really? So it kind of gets you to, but at the same time, it does get you to appreciate, some of the finer things, or like some of the, like things like that, though, it just gets you to appreciate it, in a sense too, because there's just so much to it, and I think that's kind of what makes it so nice, working on some of those things. But that's just my opinion. Um, but so this is the Flagler County Historical Society. So definitely check out some of the great things that they do, especially with the Holden House Museum. Um, and there's other things. Um, so um, the Flagler families, the some newspapers, and I'm on there. I'm on the uh, so yep. So you made your character's garb on a treadle sewing machine. Yeah, I it's one of those things. It definitely gets you to appreciate, once you use those things, it gets you to appreciate, using those things and stuff after a while, and it's like while you might not do it anymore, I mean, I'm sure you probably do use, the treadle sewing machine, but sometimes, but when you see someone who does it often or does it a lot on a regular basis, it kind of gives you an appreciation, and stuff. At least for me, it's, even though it's like, nope, nope, I'll let you do it, but I understand your whole, aspect of it, though. It's like, kind of like kind of like an earned respect, I guess. It's like you kind of gotta, appreciate the person for using it and stuff. Um, but I'm on the Flagler County Historical Society website right now. Um, so the Holden House and the Cisco Dean Research Library Annex. Um, so definitely come on their website and check it out. It seems like they have some events that may be going on in August. To what it seems like, let me kind of read this over a little bit. Um, and then Florida Highwaymen Art Show, um, History Update newsletter. So they do have one for July. Um, so for those that are checking in now, definitely check out the Flagler County Historical Society. Um, they have some pretty cool stuff going on, like the Holden House. Um, that's going to have to be put on my list of places to go. I'm going to put that on my list to make sure that's on my list, um, of places to go to. Because I want to go there. I want to make sure that I go there. And this seems like that would be kind of a place that would be up my alley and stuff. Um, so let's. I just pressed on the history button on the top title here, the top of the website here, to see some of the other cool things and stuff. Oh gosh. Uh, you see, press it again, see what the deal is. Yep. So historic locations in Flagler County. The Bullow Plantation, or the Bilo Plantation. Sorry, Bilo. The Bilo Plantation is there. Um, so the Bilo Plantation is there. Um, that's what I found interesting about the Bilo Plantation is that um, how it was kind of taken out, unfortunately taken out, to an extent during the Seminole War. Let me pull up some of my other cool places and things about the um, Willow Plantation, or the Bilo Plantation here, the Bilo, the rocks there. So one question that I have here, um, historic road here about the Bilo Plantation. Um, so it seems like that the rock seems to kind of have some of the rock has that charred look on it. Is that from the now? This is coming from me being ignorant on this particular matter. But would it be safe to assume that the reason why the rock has that charred look, um, is it because of the fire from when the house was burned or the plantation was burned down, or is that naturally forming, um, or is that color just naturally forming? I'm asking from ignorance. I would probably presume from the fire, but I think that one, me being unfamiliar, I'm unsure because I know that looking at some of the rock, it does look like that it was charred or has that look to it. Wasn't sure if that was left over or if that was from when the building burned down or not. If you happen to know, let me know. Because I find that pretty interesting and stuff. Um, but what was it? Yep, the rest is from when it was. Yep, okay, yep. So that is that that does make sense. Depends on the part. Some is from the sugar processing, and the rest is from when it was torched. Okay, yep. So that's what I was kind of wondering about. I wasn't sure offhand, because I know that. So it does say that is from what you mentioned. It is from the sugar processing, as well as from when it was torched. That's interesting to know. I mean, I'll have to make note of that. Um, uh, char look on some. I'm gonna make note of this in my notes here for this particular video, so I can make sure that I look into that too, from that aspect. Though, because I was wondering about that though when I was looking, at the photos and doing some reading and stuff. I was like, well, it would make sense for that to be the case. Um, of rock is due to the sugar cane processing as well as it was. Okay. So that'll be another aspect that I'll have to look at as well. Because I found that pretty interesting though when I was reading up on the site itself, and stuff. So some interesting things that I read. Um, oh, really? So the look, so the a great, so the book, look up A Great Rosy Glow. The fire could be seen 40 plus miles away in St. Augustine. Now that's pretty fascinating. Or, I mean, well, fascinating in the sense that that was something that was noted, but sad that that is something that happened as far as burning the plantation. But at the same time, it's like, well, history has a way of uh, history is interesting. um, so not well now that you are here, as good as it sounds, I may have a question for you. Um, um, So when so in 1821, um, Major Charles Bilo bought about 4,675 acres. Um, huh. Also, Bilo was arrested because he shot a cannon at the militia. Oh gosh, yeah, I would imagine that would be an interesting story. Um, was arrested. I'm I'm gonna make note of these things and look them up because it does sound pretty interesting. Not that I'm gonna use it in my video, but as kind of some trivial things to look up and stuff. It's I'm kind of one of those ones that likes to look up stuff like, wow, that's interesting. It's what it's kind of what and um, was arrested. Uh, militia. Now, now that you're here, um, so I I presume you know quite a bit about the Bilo Museum or the plantation. I mean, the Bilo plantation. Um, um, we're definitely going to have to sit down at some point and talk about some of this cool stuff. Um, uh, painting birds. Okay. Well, you and I are going to have to talk at some point because I definitely think that you would be a wealth of information as far as about the Bilo plantation, because I did do a little bit on the website, not necessarily the um, it was on it was on like it was like the state park website that I was on. Um, Yep, no worries, Jeff. I know that you're at the mercy of the battery that you have now, Jeff. No worries. Um, no worries at all. Hang on as long as you can. Um, you know, uh, I'll probably be on here for a while longer, knowing me. So no worries. Um, but if I don't catch you later, no worries at all. We'll definitely talk later and we'll have some fun. Um, but so no worries, Mr. Jeff. Now, Kings Road. Um, what would be a good place to get some information other than the state park? Um, other than the state park website, what would be a good place um, to get some information, reliable information on the Bilo plantation? Because for me, obviously, um, I love historically accurate. Well, I just want to make sure that the information is accurate, of course, as far as sources and stuff. So if you happen to know a good place to check out some good information, that would be great. Um, called Bill Ryan wrote a good book called Buy Low Gold. Okay. I'm gonna look this up right now. Um, gold. Um, okay. So Old Kings Road. Um, excellent housekeeper to the Bullo family. Um, okay. Ooh, okay. So, the discovery of a lost journal of Auntie Mary, housekeeper to the Bilo family of Florida, will take you to a new, well-researched tale of the building and destruction of a great plantation. Um, okay, yep. So I'm gonna check out that book then. Um, um, so I'm gonna check out this book then, and all that sorts. And it appears that they sell it on Amazon too. It appears that way. Um, so it appears that they sell it. So I'm gonna see about a copy. Uh, so I'm gonna see about getting a copy of that book and stuff. And because because I definitely am pretty fascinated by this. Because this is definitely a topic that I definitely want to make sure that I uh, understand by using some family legends, writing to the soldiers during the Seminole War. I've attempted to present the story of what I believe really happened here. I think Auntie Mary existed in one form or another, as did the farm near Valdosto, Georgia. The story of Emily Bilo did appear in several spots, so I do believe it is true. Historic actor James Bullock, who is on the cover shot, may well have the slave Scipio as the ancestor. Um, okay, if you want a good tour of Bilo, take a night tour. You can feel the history around you. So how would I be able to arrange a night tour? Um, what? Do I have to sign up uh, on the website, or is that something that I can just do during their regular hours? Or because I know that, because as I mentioned earlier, I know that they have some weird hours. Last I checked and stuff. Is that something that I can just arrange, or? Um, yep, James Bullock was instrumental for you know the reconstruction there. Yep, absolutely. So, well, that's pretty good to know. Um, so um, that's pretty interesting, though. Um, yep. Okay, so they have a website for events then. So I'll make sure that I check out their website because I know that when I had gone on their website through the state website, I know that's kind of where I read about some of their hours and stuff, and it was like, oh, interesting. Because if I remember correctly, um, I know they had some interesting hours, so I'm gonna have to check that out and stuff to see what extent um, that is. Um, which is great and all. So I'll have to make sure that I um, check that out. Because I know that they had mentioned that to me before. Um, but anyways, um, bear with me as I'm looking into this. Um, but yep. So I'm gonna make sure that I check out their events and stuff. Um, and kind of go from there. Because I'm definitely gonna because as I mentioned, I do anticipate doing a video on them. I have all the research and the whole script done for the most part. Um, yep. So look up Friends of Tamako Basin. They do stuff with Bilo through that county. Okay, great. I'm gonna look that up too, though. So um, interestingly enough, what's so cool is um, I know that um, I'm kind of looking through some of the stuff. Thankfully, I wish I had known about that book though that you had mentioned, because that's one of the things that I was lacking, because a lot of the sources that I was using for the Bilo plantation was just a lot of information that I had gotten. Obviously, of course, it was verified information, but in accurate information, but was able to get a lot of it from some friends, some articles, some newspapers and stuff. But I wish that I had known about that book. Um, Unfortunately, I did not. But I wish I did, because that is something that I think would be great. And I'm going to get that book now, um, and stuff, and have that ordered, so I can at least kind of get some of that information down. Um, and also you all have that have a video here on the Flagler County Historical Society website. It appears to have the Bilo plantation here. Um, a video on the topic, so I'm going to watch that as well. As At some point this evening after the video, because that does look pretty cool. So I'm going to have to check that out. Um, so I have to do that too. Um, but anyways, that's so fascinating. But anyways, if any of you all have any questions or anything that you want to discuss as far as Florida history, some sites that you all are curious about, please let us know in the comments and stuff. Would love to be able to discuss them as possible and stuff. Um, Definitely want to make sure that I answer that stuff for you. Um, for those that are here, also don't forget to please like and subscribe to the channel. I know I keep forgetting to say that, but anyways, um, some other cool sites that I've noticed about Florida um, is the what is the I also heard about what is the gosh, it's the Hallstrom House. It's a pineapple plantation. It's in Vero Beach. That's another place that I've been thinking about going to, um, and doing a video on at some point within the next couple of years. That's another site that's kind of small and unknown, or relatively unknown, um, to an extent, um, that needs some uh, consideration and a shout out and stuff. Um, oh gosh, it's been quite the day, but I'll have to make sure that I do that and stuff. Um, Look that up because this is the Hallstrom House, um, also known as the Hallstrom Farmstead. is a historic house in Vero Beach, Florida. The house addressed in the actual single pine scrub, maritime hammock, scrubby flatlands, bottomland forest. Okay. Yep. So, the conservation area size is about 93 acres. So the hours of operation is 7:30 a.m. to sunset year round. Open to public, yes. Um, so there is some parking, um, some restrooms, some benches, boardwalk, walking trails, informational kiosks, and signage. Um, uh, so basically, this is a 93-acre conservation area and includes the remaining uh, privately owned uh, privately owned lands associated with the historic Hallstrom farmstead and adjacent natural areas of sand pine scrub, maritime hammock, scrubby flatwoods, and bottomland forest. A portion of the Indian River County was settled in the 1800s by Scandinavian immigrants who developed farms, many based on the cultivation of pineapples, that later developed into some of the earliest citrus groves in the region of Florida. Uh, the areas the area also contains some of the northernmost known protected locations from Loch Lochela's Mint, uh, Dicerandra immaculata, guess it's a scientific name. Um, I didn't do very well in science in some cases. A federally endangered plant known also to occur in southern St. Lucie in northern Indian River counties. Uh, Indeed. So the historic farmstead house is owned and operated by the Indian River County Historical Society and is open to the public. The farmstead also includes several barns and outbuildings on the east coast of Old Dixie Highway that are now open to the public due to the need, or not open to the public due to the need of significant renovation. Please refer to the website's homepage for the map showing the location of this conservation area. We encourage the public to enjoy observing wildlife and learning about our conservation efforts. So definitely give this place a call. I personally have not been here, but it is on my list of places to go to and check out. Um, but anywho, um, so anyways, with that being said, um, do we have any more questions or anything that you all find relevant that to Florida's history and stuff? No matter if it's an unknown site or if it's known um, or whatever the case may be. Is there any other topics that you want to cover in regards to Florida history? Let us know. Give us a shout out. Um, I'll be on here for a little bit longer. Um, but while I wait for some more questions, I'll make sure that I cover the fourth part of our discussion. My future plans for the channel involving Florida's rich history. And I think that's kind of where um, um, Now these now while I wait on you all to give some comments, I'm going to go over the my future plans for the channel as well. In regards to Florida. So while I wait for your questions, so my plans for Florida. I'm going to be honest. Obviously, it's going to be not necessarily a slow process, but it's going to be a process nonetheless. That's going to take some time because of my limited ability at this current time. Um, Living in North Carolina. Now, for those that don't know, I was born and raised in Florida, and I grew up in Florida. Spent you know quite a bit of my life in Florida and stuff. The majority of my life in Florida, and all that sorts. It was probably about 23, 24 that I, about 23, 24, that I left Florida and stuff. And I'm about, in my early 30s now. But anywho, so I grew up in Florida. Um, but my plan is to move back at some point in the near future. But anyways, my plans with Florida history and some of the videos is to ultimately kind of expand a little bit more into the niches that Florida has to offer, some of the little ins and outs. Yes, I do plan on doing big stuff, kind of like the Castillo, fort and stuff in St. Augustine, and as well as other places as well. But I also enjoy doing the small, places that are not as known, too, for that reason. Um, so it's kind of a work in progress. Um, and with my, plans to ultimately do it one day, like let's just say, um, my plan to move to Florida would be within like maybe in 10 years, uh, maybe give or take a little bit. Um, But for the time being, for when I do, go on vacation there, or take little trips here and there to Florida, that is a plan to do nonetheless, and cover some of those topics as I see fit and able to do so. So that is a plan. And again, it might not be 10 years, it may be 20 years that I finally move back to Florida. That is a plan. That is something that is um, in the works within the next unknown set time. So for those that are wanting to get more Florida videos, don't worry. You're gonna get a heck of a lot of videos on Florida history, so not to worry. You're definitely gonna get your fill. um, but just hold on, you're gonna get those videos nonetheless. I'll make sure of that. um, you know, but just give me some time. It's just going to be a little bit before I can finally get more and more videos of that kind of stuff done. Like for example, like this coming Thanksgiving, I'm going to be filming three great videos. Obviously, the Castillo fort, and then as well as the Bilo plantation, um, and then of course some other stuff as well as the Battle of Alligator Bridge. So those are going to be the three big new topics that I'm going to be covering in the next couple, like in over Thanksgiving, like this coming year. I'm going to cover those three topics, and then next year I'm going to have some more topics that I'm going to cover as time allows and stuff. So bear with me as I'm cranking out those videos. Um, and then, of course, I'm also going to be hopefully the Kings Row Historic District and I can potentially work something out to where we can hopefully work something out to where we can possibly do some collaborations hopefully, if that's something that they would consider or be willing to do, um, because I know that they are a wealth of information, and I would certainly love to do something if we can work something out. So that's kind of some of the plans. And as mentioned, I do have a huge list of historic sites and places to go, as well as I want to go, um, in Florida, to do videos on. So it is in my list of things to do. Um, it just it's kind of, it's not necessarily time, but it kind of is. It's just the ability to do so, and like being able to sit down and do those videos and stuff. So it is in the books of things to do. Um, but anywho, now for those that are still here, by all means, come on over to our Facebook group by the same name, Our Living History. We do all kinds of things, ranging, for all parts of American history. So it's not just Revolutionary War or French and Indian War. We do a lot of things involving all aspects of American history. Um, so like we've done some videos, a lot of videos on some Florida history. Like as I mentioned, like we've gone to Fort Christmas, we've gone to the Benson House, Gilbert's Bar House. We've done a lot of things in Florida as well, and in Georgia and South Carolina. Things ranging from 17th century all the way up to 20th century. So like I've done some World War II reenacting as well, which has been great for me. So we have a pretty vast list of things that we do. So if there's and vast interests, especially within Florida. So please let's join us over at the Our Living History page, and we'll figure something out. Um, but anyways, to the person on the Kings Road Historic District page that's commenting on that was so kind to us today and blessed us with their presence today. Um, Please reach out to me. I would love to discuss um, some stuff further with you, um, and all that sorts. So please uh, do so at your earliest convenience. Um, but if there's anything else, just let us know. If not, no big deal. I'll hang on here for another minute. Um, So I'll kind of hang on to or I'll keep the live video going for another minute or two. If there's any kind of follow-up questions or whatever. If not, no big deal. If there is, great, please ask away. Um, but I guess this is kind of the final wrap. If there's nothing else, so if there's nothing else, this is the final wrap. Unless there's more questions, I would love to be able to answer them, and and help you out, and talk more about Florida history. Um, because I know that Florida has a very, very vast, rich history, especially with citrus and stuff. Um, Especially um, just just in general. Um, so if there's anything else, just let us know. And thank you very much, Kings Road Historic District, for being so kind and partaking in the video for as often as you can. And thank you very much, Jeff, as well. A shout out to Jeff um, for partaking in the video for when he was able. He did a great job. And thank you very much, Kings Road Historic District, for your wonderful input. It was well appreciated, and well taken. As I mentioned before, I love being around people who um, I love being around people who are more knowledgeable than me, because I know for a fact I myself Love learning from, people who have more knowledge than me, as you all can tell. I find it fascinating, and it's something that I've always loved history, but it wasn't until I'd like to say about 5, 6 years ago when I initially got involved in the reenacting hobby. I do 18th century reenacting as well. That I really started to kind of get involved in history and stuff, like really involved, like in just in getting involved in any way that I can. But anyways, thank you all for those that partook, and thanks for the great questions and stuff. Um, I'm gonna try to do these live feeds as often as possible. Um, so by all means, let's get a regular schedule down of when we can work something out. Um, for however often, and we'll go from there. But anyways, thank you all again, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And oh gosh, it's 5:35. We've been going since about 2:30. I guess it kind of gets you to appreciate all the great things we do. But anyways, have a great rest of the day, and please join us on our Living History Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And see you all soon. Okay.